Super quick question here. How many tabs do you have open right now? If you're like me, it's a lot. And if you're running a business, it's a lot more. And with all those tabs, you're spending more time searching through data and less time, growing your business. But HubSpot's customer platform brings all your tools into a single powerful place that your teams can use together. So close those tabs. It's business growing time. Visit HubSpot.com to get started today. Hello, everybody. It's Sunday, and you know what that means. I'm Jon Weigell, and this is the weekend edition of the Hustle Daily Show. You've probably noticed your favorite bar starting to carry mocktails and non-alcoholic beer lately. This industry shift has affected many legacy alcohol businesses, with young consumers embracing the sober, curious mindset. In a recent survey from Gallup, 45% of Americans say drinking 1 or 2 alcoholic beverages per day is bad for one's health. Shocker. So how are some companies capitalizing off this trend? Enter Athletic Brewing. Founded in 2017, it has become the #1 non-alcoholic beer in the US and is sitting on an $800 million valuation. Today, I am joined by the co-founder and CEO of Athletic Brewing, Bill Shufelt, to chat about how he got the business going and how they're growing and thriving in today's drink market. So let's get into it. All right, welcome, Bill. Great to have you on today. How you doing?
John, thanks for having me on The Hustle. Been a long-time subscriber to the newsletter, so excited to be on here.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, it's awesome to finally have you. So, I talk about Athletic, I feel like, all the time as a business that's really kind of fit into an area that didn't really have something before with non-alcoholic beer. Like, of course, you have businesses like the classic O'Doul's, which has been a household name for a long time. But Athletic has really kind of found its mark in this space. And there's a ton of great news lately. I wanted to ask first what you kind of attribute your rapid growth towards since 2017, from when you were then to where you got to now.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. I think it's just consistently executing on a real mission and vision that we have as a company. Athletic is such a simple business idea. It was a category that existed. It just had no innovation. It was hiding in plain sight and fit so well with the modern lifestyle. And it was just sitting there on the shelf. Nothing was changing about it while the whole grocery store changed around it. And so it's a really simple vision. We want to make delicious non-alcoholic beer that fits well in the life cycle of modern, busy, healthy adults. And, that had to change on the product side and it had to change on the marketing side. And we invested a lot in both of those and continue to. Like, we're relentlessly focused on not only the quality of the beer, but how it makes people feel when they drink the beer and when they say they're proud to drink Athletic. I think it's totally like a passion business. So much of my life is in this company, and it's like 100% of my intellectual bandwidth and my curiosity and my passion. But then not only me and our co-founder, John, but the 250 incredible teammates we have along for this ride with us, we feel so lucky to have too. So at the end of the day, it's like the people on our team are so incredible. And then the community we serve is so awesome as well that it makes it really fun to do this.
Yeah, it also really helps that the product really resonates with people. I think the way that you've positioned the product and the way that it tastes and the way that it looks clearly has triggered passion in a lot of people out there, as well as it has yourself, which I think is just a big thing about how the business has progressed.
Well, I think a big part of that too is so many businesses or products come out of focus groups. People are like, what do they think people want? And they try to come up with an idea.
Right.
I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. This idea was such a pain point and thorn in my side that I couldn't possibly ignore it. And it had the potential for this enormous positive impact on tens of millions of people. The combination of those two things was so exhilarating. I'm not saying it because I'm the founder of the company. When I crack open one of our beers and drink it, it's one of the most delightful, special moments of any day. And I think that's echoed across our customer community. So I think that's why we're successful, is we meet a real need in the world and really deliver on that consumer delight.
Right. Yeah, and it's a problem that you were experiencing yourself, you said, of just having no options out there. And it is such a crazy idea how it was such a glaring hole in the market for so long,
Yep, for sure. I was just a very normal, busy adult. I had a desk job in finance. I had to be at the desk 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., was graded on my intellect and merit every year. And really, I just wanted to be a little bit healthier, sleep a little bit better, have a little better workouts, be a little better at my job, be a little more mindful in my relationships. Super normal, modern adult goals. taking away alcohol really helped me hit a lot of those things I wanted to go in that direction.
Yeah, totally. And you just needed something to kind of fill that gap, in which you invented alongside your co-founder, of course, Jon.
Well, I wanted to do those very normal adult things, but I still wanted to be a normal social adult. And like that was very incompatible with the adult beverage options on the shelf at the time.
And now, fast forward from then to now, you've created this company. It just doubled its valuation to $800 million, which is absolutely crazy, as reported by Wall Street Journal. That's insane. That growth is huge. And you also just recently opened a third brewing facility. Is that right, in San Diego?
So it's actually, we just purchased our fourth brewing facility.
Fourth?
Yeah, so we've built 2 and bought 2 now. So in 2017, when Jon and I officially embarked on this mission, we built the first non-alcoholic production brewery in the country in tap room from the ground up, basically. And so that was 2017. We brought it online in 2018. It was an enormous investment. People told us we were morons. Like, why would you ever build a brewery and invest so much money in a category that basically doesn't exist? Nobody's talking about. You don't even have a product yet. And we're like, we're going to build it. It's coming in a big way. Mm-hmm. And we raised a ton of money. It took us 120 investor meetings to do that. It took us even longer to build the brewery. And then we outgrew it in 10 months. And that was pretty crushing, but we had a lot of heart for that first original brewery. And then we kind of scrambled and we bought a much bigger facility that was about 10 times the size and 3,000 miles away, which is a big step for us. Yeah. We signed that brewery on March 17th, 2020, which was a very interesting signing date for such a big investment in our company. And then, while a lot of the world stood still in 2020, we ran even harder than we were. And it was a perfect moment to cover a ton of ground and do a lot of innovation. Mm-hmm. And so basically a year and a half later, we were already signing to build a bigger brewery back in Connecticut. So from the original brewery to the one down the street in Connecticut, it was about 50 times the capacity as the original one.
Wow.
And we just signed a couple months ago to build a brewery that's twice as big as that brewery in San Diego. So, or rounding numbers there. But I mean, that makes it sound like it's 4 really big, easy leaps, but it's been a million really small, tough steps and daily challenges. Yeah. But at the same time, exhilarating and really fun.
And you referenced some tough challenges early on, and I know how long it took to get some investors and get some people behind this. But from then, in practically asking people to come invest in your product, and now with people like JJ Watt or David Chang or Lance Armstrong electing to invest in your brand, what does that transition feel like? And does it feel good to, I guess, be a cool brand?
It was bleak. So I came from the hedge fund world, working at one of the world's biggest hedge funds, and one would intuit and say, oh, hedge fund guy enters another industry and has all this access to capital. Unfortunately, it was not that way. It took 9 months and 120 meetings to raise the capital. There were times where I would go to dinner with 4 or 5 people who were all probably worth over $50 million. And I would walk away from those dinners with no money invested and 5 no's. And angel investing and raising capital for unproven concepts is very tough. A lot of investors, especially institutional investors, want to chase proven markets, existing concepts. They'd much rather be a follower of something that's working than get the ball rolling from a standstill. Unfortunately, it is really those 0 to 1 businesses that really create the power law of returns. Jon and I had a very long head start in a lot of investment because no one believed in what we're doing and really still don't. There's stuff on LinkedIn or the internet every day that is just throwing an unbelievable, unprovoked amount of hate on our business, which is fun. Still nobody believes in us, even though we're the biggest in the category. And I love that about it. It gave us a pretty big head start, I would say.
Yeah, it really varies also by generation, I feel like. Even talking to my own dad, when I told him I was actually doing this interview, and he said, well, what's the point of non-alcoholic beer? And I think there's just that difference in perspective from generation to generation. And of course, a lot of younger generations are huge customers of Athletic.
Yeah, so when we entered the category, it was very much people who had aged out of alcohol or lapsed out of alcohol for all different penalty box reasons. And now it's actually mostly the opposite. It's a very wide age dispersion of customers, but especially popular among younger generations. I think for people who came of legal drinking age without good adult non-alcoholic beverage options on the menu and without bartenders and restaurants talking about these options with pride, it's very tough to imagine it without experiencing it. So like, I would love to talk to your dad and share a beer with him and tell him why it's awesome and like what goes into the can, like where we source the malt and the hops and like why it's just as relaxing to crack open a non-alcoholic beer and sit on the couch and pair it with food than it is something with like a little bit of alcohol that you're probably not going to feel for an hour anyway. Right. And once you like taste it and experience it, like people get it. But like in the younger generations, like this was Jon and I's dream, is that like people would turn 21 and open a menu and be as excited about the non-alcoholic side as the alcoholic side. And so in this day and age, it's much easier for consumers to make the choice because there are options on the menu. Like there really wasn't even an option 10 years ago to make that choice.
Yeah, I mean, the options have increased. And also, this recent Gallup study came out that said a lot of younger people, more Americans, as time goes on, are viewing alcohol as more harmful, which is leading them to other options like non-alcoholic beers, even non-alcoholic spirits. So what do findings like that tell you about your business and what you stumbled onto here?
Starting with the data, I think the stats you reference are a Gallup poll that came out recently that said 45% of adults now believe that moderate drinking, as defined as 1 or 2 drinks per day, is harmful for your health, which was like, 20 years ago, there wasn't much information around these things and people assumed that's fine. And it may be, Athletic's not here to make a health call necessarily. Like we're just here to give people options.
Right.
But since Athletic launched and there's better options, just in that last 6 years, the perception has changed 17% on that stat, which if you apply 17% to the US adult population, that's an enormous amount of people who no longer view moderate drinking as healthy. Mm-hmm. And I do see stats all the time, whether it's sell-side research to different polls that say, anywhere from 50 to 66% of US adults are actively moderating their alcohol intake. Which I think that's one thing to say. We'll see if people really do that. But it is much easier to do if there are good options out there. And bars, restaurants, and the industry aren't losing revenue. People are just switching between categories, right, sometimes within occasions. And so I think that's really exciting. And it's like very generational. And there's like growth just coming from totally different pockets of the industry, exciting, innovative companies like Athletic. But in terms of data, say 30 years ago, when my family was around the dinner table talking about something, if we wanted to get an answer for something, we had to like go pull encyclopedias out of the shelf and like find something and flip through.
Right.
Now we all have the internet, obviously, but like even more recently, a lot of people have fitness wearables, things that measure their performance when they sleep. They measure their diets, like everything that is inputted into their body from food to activity to sleep is measured. And then you see how that makes you feel the next day, alcohol including. And like a lot of that information is very hard to ignore in the modern life. But at the end of the day, like Athletic's goal isn't necessarily to kill the alcohol industry. Like there is a lot of good things about the alcohol industry and social lubrication and societal celebrations and rituals and everything. And at the end of the day, the world's a stressful place. What Athletic Brewing does do is, 40% of adults don't drink with any regularity. And it's really probably a higher percentage than that. We're welcoming that like half of adults into bars and restaurants, into social occasions, and to those culinary experiences. So there's a lot of growth there.
There is such a growth in the industry. You have non-alcoholic beer and you also have non-alcoholic spirits as well. So how does Athletic look to grow with the market as things change, as new innovations come out, as things really get going here in the NA space?
We view it all as very positive sum and rising tide. Like the movement and like magnitude of the moment we're in is so big. People have been drinking alcohol for 5,000 years. And in all those societies, there were like evidence of home brewing in homes and people celebrating with beer and then later wine and everything. We're disrupting a 5,000-year trend by giving people options that fit the modern lifestyle that arguably these options were decades late arriving on shelf. And so there's probably a lot of pent-up demand and excitement there that even if people don't know about. So I think a lot of people look at the category in its current form. The category was like 80 million when we started in the US. It's now like 700 million in the off-premise, which really probably means the category is somewhere like $1 billion to $1.5 billion in the US. But in the context of the $115 billion adult beverage market, that is just getting going. And in the future, we're probably talking about double-digit billions for just non-alcoholic beer. But then when you add in the wine and spirits verticals, you're catching all those other occasions and different levels
Right.
of premium and value and everything. There's a big world out there, and I think it's going to be one of the biggest growth trends in CPG for probably decades to come.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we want to be the leader in that and throw open a really big tent. But we're helping along brands as well, both big and small. We've helped form a trade group. We're sharing a lot on food safety and different practices and stuff too. So yeah, really thinking about a very positive sum. You would think as a extremely small entrepreneurial company that, having year after year have Heineken come in, then Bud come in, then Corona, Guinness, Stella, Boston Beer, Lagunitas, Sierra Nevada, Blue Moon, like all of a sudden every name brand is into our category where there were no name brands when we started.
Right.
And that gets me really excited.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there's way too much lifting to do alone. So we're excited to lead, but excited for the future.
Yeah, and that is really exciting to see all of these extremely legacy brands hop in on this growing market. And I don't even like to call it a trend because I feel like it's outstayed the term trend in the non-alcoholic beer space. I mean, just before this podcast, you were talking about something you were trying, a non-alcoholic spirit. Have you been very impressed by any other non-alcoholic beverages or innovations in the space lately?
For sure. And so the exciting thing about these two is I think the beverage industry and the adult beverage industry are so used to it being a Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And everyone's seen the Bud and Miller Lite wars over the years. And I think because those options were all very clear substitutes, it was a 1-for-1 fight over the same consumer, the same occasion, and the same day of the week. And you were either winning or losing that, but there weren't two occasions emerging.
Right.
What Athletic has done is taken beer from a 1 or 2 day thing to a 7 day of the week thing, any hour of the day, inviting half the adult population into the category that probably wasn't visiting the beer shelf. So there's a lot of growth there. It's not just the substitute anymore. But yeah, and the diversity of the shelf is really exciting. There's everything from the biggest of the big producers to smallest, starting to be some really good non-alcoholic wines, which is fun as a meal pairing. Personally, I'm partial to beer. Beer has very few blind spots in what you can pair a beer with food and occasions. Mm-hmm. But that being said, there's a great spot for non-alcoholic wine, non-alcoholic spirits. I'm hesitant to name any brands by name, but
Sure.
Some really fun stuff like different Amaros. There's this Pathfinder beverage that I don't even know how to classify. It's a cool spirit.
We're talking a lot today about interrupting the status quo. I think kind of another big way that Athletic has interrupted the status quo is becoming, for example, partners with Arsenal, a football club in England, and kind of offering non-alcoholic beer in sports stadiums. So what does it mean, I guess, for Athletic to be supplying drinks to stadiums and event spaces like that?
I mean, I think through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and maybe before, there were almost big structural monopolies in CPG and beverage where it was so hard to compete with these big companies because of all the different tiers and barriers. But I think the innovation and the resilience of entrepreneurs and teams that are coming after the categories is so consistent and so exciting that you're starting to see some companies like the one you mentioned break through. And I'd like to think Athletic is in that category. And the Arsenal partnership first landed on my desk from a fan who was disappointed at the options in the stadium, a diehard Arsenal gunner. And, they were like, why can't Athletic be in these stadiums? It'd be the perfect match day beer. And, we heard that a few times, and then we really started to kick it around internally at Athletic and really seemed like the perfect partnership. But just like in the US, it's not only the UK, but sports environments have a reputation of being very boozy places. Rightfully so. It's people having fun, but people do get out of hand, and they're also very family friendly environments. And now all of a sudden there's beer for everyone at these stadiums. And so we're kind of floating a trial balloon with Arsenal in the US. We're in probably 100 venues and some sports teams. And so it's really a response from our consumers and investing in the things our community cares about at the end of the day.
And I mean, that's awesome because when you find consumers in a stadium or a concert or any sort of event space, that means, sure, you're satisfying people who want to see your product in those places, but you're also potentially gaining new consumers who can take that finding, go to the grocery store and pick that up for themselves.
Yep. And it's also just doing things authentic to our lifestyle. Honestly, it's like so much of the brand is outdoors oriented, sports oriented, because that is my life coming through on like the design in the cans.
Yeah.
I was actually wearing the jersey at work earlier today, and I thought I should put on my adult clothes before the podcast, but I should have left the jersey on.
I would have loved to see it. Is it an Arsenal jersey?
Yeah, it's the 2024 home kit.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Something else I wanted to hit on is kind of how the word got around. I will tell you right now how I found out about Athletic Brewing, which was extremely word of mouth, not even an advertisement of any sort. I'm a pro wrestling fan. I was watching this wrestling event. There's a press conference afterwards. Afterwards, this wrestler named Jon
Moxley, yeah,
comes out with this bag of beers, and he said, "Oh, this is a non-alcoholic beer. I love it so much. Please sponsor me, Athletic." I was like, "Okay, wow, look at that!" And something like that, just so small, like a word of mouth thing, just triggered a bunch of people, probably wrestling fans, to buy the product.
That was one of my favorite moments in like the history of the company. It was so hysterical. And Jon was the best. So he did that press conference and he like slammed down the beer on the podium after he won the belt. And he was like trying to get a sponsorship. And our teammates who were in the area somewhat near where he lived, we went and made a beer pyramid on his yard bin the next day.
Oh, that's great.
I think really like word of mouth has been our strongest thing where, from the outset, I knew non-alcoholic beer had this terrible reputation and no one would drive by a billboard on a highway and see non-alcoholic beer. Like the second they saw that, they'd shut off and be like, not for me. And so I really went out in the world and wanted to make 1,000 true fans face to face and talk to them about the beer, have them experience the beer, our company values. But in that, I had a lot of fun talking to our customers and sharing beers with people. And I probably sampled at 75 race events that first summer, whether it was like 5Ks, half marathons, ultra marathons. I'd like, if anyone would have me, I'd be there with a cooler handing out hundreds of beers on a weekend. And, when people finish these races, like they're happy, they're thirsty, they're receptive. And so it was a perfect forum for me to get like a lot of free beer into people's hands. And so I probably handed out somewhere in the like 250,000 to 500,000 beers like that first summer maybe. Oh. But I think that's really meaningful in terms of like spreading word of mouth. And then we've scaled everything from there. Kind of just like, how nothing in Athletic comes from a focus group. Everything is like lived experience and things we know and hear from customers or like know ourselves. I think so much in brand building, people are looking for like a software plugin or something that is going to like hyperscale their business and like be this magical like lead gen. And at the end of the day, like people are just so good at sniffing through that stuff and they want authentic experiences. They want to hear directly from companies and things that don't scale done over and over again. Before you know it, they are scaling.
Yeah, when you think about starting a business, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have had this before, when you think of starting some sort of new venture, at first it seems very glitzy and glamorous and like, oh, I'm going to be the CEO and founder of this very sensational product, right? But, your story right there just told me that, hey, listen, like you went to all of these events personally with the beer. You gave out the beer to people directly to the consumer, and I'm sure which they appreciated. Do you have any advice to anybody that would like to start a business or has an idea and kind of wants to put it into action? Kind of what do they need to get started with that?
So I think one of the most important things is having a true passion. It is so, so hard. And for me, there was so much rejection and every inch you wanted to tackle felt like a mile. But at the end of the day, it was like fun. It was our own challenges. And every day my feet hit the floor because I had such passion for what we were doing and knew Athletic's place in the world was going to be big in my heart. And then I think at the end is like really thinking about what's your goals and time horizon is super important because that'll help inform everything. And so I know from the beginning we were thinking really long-term and really big impact with Athletic. And I wanted to make sure that the work environment at our company was awesome and we had a great culture because work is like 40% of people's life and probably way more intellectual energy and emotional energy than 40% of people's life. So we were really intentional about building our culture and hiring. Jon and I had the luxury of homebrewing in an empty warehouse together for like 9 months. So we just had nothing but time to talk about what's important. And we stood up like a really solid employee handbook and values and mission and everything. And so we've been really intentional with culture. We're like pretty slow about hiring and really intentional. But I think like forming things like team and culture is super important. And then the other big piece is make sure your goals and your timelines and everything are aligned if you do choose to raise investors.
I'm sure you get asked a lot, like what your biggest challenges were starting out. I would actually really like to know what challenges you're facing right now. It seems like the business is better than it's ever been. The non-alcoholic beer category is kind of exploding. So what are the challenges that you're facing currently?
Errors happen in all parts of our business in small and big ways. But at the end of the day, we're like ruthless about quality. We run tons of checks so that our product we feel really good about and overinvest in quality. And being really honest and transparent with how we run our business and what we do. The kind of stuff that allows you to sleep easy at night is always the right decision. It's always easier to keep a happy customer than go find new customers, for sure.
And one last thing I wanted to ask, do you have a favorite can of Athletic right now?
So I would say our Run Wild IPA, which is our main IPA, but literally Jon and I made the IPA that we wanted to drink all the time. But I would say our limited releases on our website, we always have such variety. But we did just release one of my favorite beers of the year every year. It's called Paceline Pedal. It's like a really citrusy, hazy IPA. And that one also goes to support cancer. So overall, that's one of the beers I get like 5 cases of every year and like kind of stockpile in my garage.
That sounds great. Do the limited supply beers ever make it to be a full supply beer, a full year round?
For sure. So the process is we like test all our innovation on our website, and then the most popular beers get to the stores. You only have room for like 3 to 5 beers on the shelf, and our brewers brew like 50 beers a year. We have brewing systems in our breweries from like 3 barrels all the way up to 900 barrels. When we brew like a new coffee stout or a new batch of something, we might brew 6 to 10 varieties of it and test it as a team and then scale up the one that's our favorite. Then we'll try selling it online, make sure people like it. We'll take feedback. We might dial up the recipe a little bit. And then by the time we have it nailed, it'll show up at stores like Walmart and Whole Foods and everywhere else.
So it sounds like there's a lot of fun involved, honestly. A lot of experimentation, a lot of testing, a lot of good beer. Seems like a fun day every day.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining me today. It was so great chatting with you. Learned a lot about businesses, learned a lot about Athletic in particular, of course. And good luck with the growing demand. Good luck with meeting the demand, and good luck with some new brews coming up soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. This is a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, that'll do it for us today. Thanks so much, Bill, and thank you for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show on this great Sunday. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed to it, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email and give us a follow on Instagram, and we'll see you tomorrow. With access to so much information, it's hard to feel like an informed, discerning citizen. That's why Make Me Smart, a podcast from Marketplace, makes it easy for you to stay in the know. Each weekday, hosts Kai Risdall and Kimberly Adams unpack the latest from DC, explore the day's tech news, and they make sense of the economy. Because in a world that's constantly changing, we all need to stay smart. Listen to Make Me Smart wherever you get your podcasts. Attention to all founders, hustlers, and hardworking entrepreneurs. The Hustle's 2024 Entrepreneurship Trends Report is out now, and it's a goldmine of valuable strategies, data-driven insights, and expert tips for elevating your business. Have you ever wondered how successful business owners are staying ahead of the crowd in today's super competitive market? Well, we talked to over 500 small business owners to uncover how they're doing it and did a ton of research so you don't have to. We know you're busy building your business, so we got you covered. The Hustle's 2024 Entrepreneurship Trends Report is something you don't want to miss. This right here is the future of entrepreneurship. So stop what you're doing right now and check the link in the show notes to get that report right now.